halfway through my second cup of coffee when my phone lit up on the kitchen counter. It was my accountant. Not a call, a text. Leonard never texted. In 4 years of working together, the man had called me exactly 47 times and sent me exactly 2 texts, both of which were just his office address when I forgot it. So when his name appeared on my screen at 8:14 on a Sunday morning with the message, "Do not sign anything today, call me right now," I mean it. My stomach dropped through the floor. I had my coat on, keys in my hand. I was supposed to be at my brother's house in 20 minutes for the brunch he and his wife had been insisting on for 3 weeks straight. Every time I tried to cancel, my sister-in-law texted back with some variation of, "It's important. We really need to talk about the business. Just come." I set the keys down. My husband, Kevin, passed away 14 months ago. Pancreatic cancer. 11 weeks from diagnosis to the end. He was 41 years old. We had been married for 6 years, and in those 6 years, I had learned that Kevin was, without question, the most quietly brilliant person I had ever met. He built his manufacturing company from a $30,000 personal loan into a business that employed 63 people and turned a profit every year for the last 8. He was meticulous about everything, his health checkups, his contracts, his friendships. The cancer didn't care about any of that. In his will, Kevin left me 60% of the company. He left the remaining 40% split evenly between his older brother, my brother-in-law Raymond, and the company's original co-founder, a man named Stuart who had retired 5 years earlier and mostly just collected his quarterly checks without bothering anyone. The house was mine outright. The life insurance went into a trust I controlled. Kevin had thought through every single line. What Kevin could not have anticipated was what his brother would do with those 14 months. I called Leonard back before I even took off my coat. He answered on the first ring. "Where are you right now?" "My kitchen," I said. "I was about to leave for Raymond's." "Don't." His voice was flat in a way I had never heard from him before. Leonard was the kind of person who treated bad news like a light rain. Inconvenient but manageable. Here's an umbrella. He was not flat. "I need you to come to my office." "Leonard, it's Sunday." "I know what day it is. I've been here since 6 this morning." A pause. "Something's wrong with the financials. Not wrong like a mistake. Wrong like it was done on purpose." I sat down on the kitchen floor, not in a chair. "The floor. How bad?" I asked. "Come see it yourself," he said, "and bring whatever login you have for the company's document portal. Don't tell Raymond you're not coming. Just don't go." I texted my brother-in-law that I was running late and would be there by noon. Then I got in my car and drove to Leonard's office. Let me back up a little, because to understand what I walked into that morning, you need to understand what the previous 14 months had actually looked like. When Kevin died, I was 31 years old and I had never run a company. I had my own career. I worked in project management for a mid-sized logistics firm, good salary, work I was good at. But running a manufacturing operation with 63 employees was something else entirely. Raymond knew this. He had worked alongside Kevin for years as the VP of operations, and he made it very clear, very gently, very lovingly, from the moment Kevin was in hospice, that he was there to help. He was so helpful. That was the thing. He was hopeful at the funeral, steering me through the reception with his hand on my elbow, introducing me to business contacts I didn't recognize, whispering context in my ear. He was hopeful in the weeks after when I was still barely functional by handling day-to-day decisions so I didn't have to worry. He was helpful when the quarterly board meetings came around and I showed up not knowing what half the line items meant, because he always had a summary ready, always had an explanation, always said, "Don't worry, I'll walk you through it afterward." What I didn't realize was that he was also helpful in ways I never asked for and never knew about. 2 months after Kevin died, I got an email from the company's document portal, the internal system where all contracts, vendor agreements, and board resolutions were stored. The email said my password had been reset. I assumed it was an automated security thing and reset it again without thinking much about it. I was grieving. I was barely sleeping. I was not reading every system notification carefully. 6 months after Kevin died, I mentioned to Raymond that I wanted to start reviewing the vendor contracts myself, getting more hands-on. He said that was a great idea and that he would set up a training session with the office manager. The training session kept getting rescheduled. Something always came up. I let it go longer than I should have because every time I pushed, Raymond had a reason, and the reasons were always reasonable, and I was always tired. 11 months after Kevin died, a woman named, I'll call her a former employee because that's what she is now, left the company and, on her way out, sent me a direct message on LinkedIn. Just 4 sentences. She said she didn't want to get involved in whatever was happening, but she felt like I should know that some documents she had been asked to process in the last few months didn't look right to her. She said she thought some of the signatures might not be what they appeared. She said she was sorry for my loss. She said she hoped I'd look into it. I read that message 3 times, then I forwarded it to Leonard. That was 6 weeks before his Sunday morning text. Leonard's office smelled like stale coffee and printer paper. He had 3 monitors open and printouts spread across every flat surface. He looked like he hadn't slept. He probably hadn't. He walked me through it slowly, the way you walk someone towards something they won't want to see but need to. Over the course of approximately 9 months, someone had been using my digital signature, my actual DocuSign credentials, to authorize documents I had never seen. Not all of them were dramatic. Some were small, minor vendor contract amendments, a revised maintenance agreement, a change to the company's insurance deductible. Individually, none of them would have raised a flag. Collectively, they formed a pattern. The pattern pointed toward one thing: a proposed acquisition offer from an outside investment group that would effectively dilute my 60% share by bringing in a new capital partner, restructuring the equity, and installing Raymond as CEO with an employment contract that guaranteed his position regardless of ownership changes. If the deal went through, I would go from controlling shareholder to minority partner with no operational authority, no board seat, and a buyout offer that Leonard said was valued at roughly 40% below current market. He's been building toward this for months, Leonard said. Every little document he got your signature on, or what he made look like your signature, was a building block. He needed authorization from you on about a dozen things to make this acquisition look clean and properly consented to. He got 9 of them. The brunch today? I think that's where he was planning to get you to sign the last 3. I thought about the texts from my sister-in-law. It's important. We really need to talk about the business. Just come. How did he get my credentials? I asked. Leonard pulled up a screenshot on his center monitor. Your DocuSign password was reset 14 months ago. 2 weeks after Kevin's funeral? The reset was initiated from a device registered to the company's internal IT account. Raymond manages IT access. He paused. He didn't hack you. He had a legitimate access to reset credentials. He just used it on yours and never told you. I sat very still. The signatures are technically valid, Leonard continued, in the sense that they came from your credential. But you didn't authorize them. That's forgery under a different name, and it's still fraud. I asked him what I needed to do. He said, get a lawyer, not the company's lawyer, who reported to the board, my own lawyer. Today. I also asked him one more thing. I asked if any of this was already in motion, if the acquisition had already been announced somewhere, already been disclosed. He turned to his right monitor and showed me a press release. It was dated for the following Tuesday. It was already written. It announced the acquisition, named the investment group, and quoted Raymond extensively. It referred to me, the controlling shareholder, as having enthusiastically endorsed the deal. I had never heard of the investment group in my life. I will not walk through everything that happened in the next 4 weeks in real time, because some of it is still in the legal process and my attorney has asked me to be careful about specifics. But I will tell you what I can. I hired an attorney that same Sunday afternoon. Her name is not important here, but she is extremely good at her job, and when I sent her Leonard's files at 2 p.m., she called me at 4 p.m. and told me to preserve everything, every email, every text, every document, and not to delete, forward, or alter anything. I did exactly what she said. I also did something else. For the past 6 weeks, since the LinkedIn message from the former employee, Leonard and I had quietly been documenting discrepancies. Every time something looked wrong, he flagged it and I saved it. We hadn't known exactly what we were looking at, but we'd been careful. That carefulness meant we now had a paper trail that showed, month by month, what had been altered and when. My attorney filed an emergency injunction to block the acquisition before it could be announced. That happened on Monday. Raymond didn't know about it until Tuesday morning when the press release was supposed to go out, and instead he got a legal notice. I am told I was not there, that he called my attorney's office 4 times that day. She did not take his calls. What happened next took longer than the movies would suggest. There were depositions. There were forensic accountants. There were tense, awful weeks where I had to sit in rooms with Raymond and his lawyer and answer questions and not show anything on my face. My sister-in-law stopped texting me entirely. Raymond's attorney tried twice to reframe the whole thing as a misunderstanding about shared administrative access and standard operational practice. The forensic accountants disagreed. There was one moment in particular. We were reviewing the documentation of a board resolution that supposedly bore my authorization, a resolution that had been used to justify bringing the investment group into preliminary negotiations. My attorney had flagged that the timestamp on the digital signature was a Sunday at 11 p.m. I was asked to account for my whereabouts and activities on that evening. I pulled out my phone and showed them my account history for that night. I'd been on a video call with my sister, who lives in Portland, from 9 p.m. to 11:43 p.m. I had ordered delivery. The app had the timestamp, and the IP address associated with the document signature that night was registered to the company's main office building, which I had not been to in 3 weeks. Raymond's attorney asked for a recess. I let myself breathe for the first time in about 11 days. Here is what I want to talk about for a moment, because I think it matters and I don't hear people say it enough. There's a specific kind of manipulation that doesn't feel like manipulation while it's happening. It doesn't come with a villain's voice. It comes with a hand on your elbow at your husband's funeral. It comes with calendar invites and summary documents and the words, "Don't worry, I'll take care of it." It comes disguised as hopefulness, especially when you are at your most vulnerable. Especially when you are a young widow who doesn't know corporate law and is just trying to keep 63 people employed the way her husband would have wanted. I trusted Raymond because Kevin trusted Raymond. I extended that trust automatically, like a transfer, without ever really interrogating whether it was warranted on its own. That's not stupidity. That's grief. Grief makes you reach for anything that feels like continuity, anything that feels like Kevin is still somehow present in the people he loved. Raymond knew that. I think he relied on it. What I learned, slowly and at significant cost, is that trust extended as a tribute to someone you lost is not the same as trust that has been earned. Kevin would have known the difference. He checked everything himself. He would never have let his own login credentials sit unmonitored for 14 months. Not because he was paranoid, but because he was meticulous. I had to learn that meticulousness without him. I'm still learning it. The case settled out of court 8 months after that Sunday morning. I cannot disclose the full terms, but I can tell you this. I retained my 60% controlling share. The acquisition was permanently voided. Raymond resigned from his position as VP of Operations and surrendered his 20% equity stake as part of the settlement. The matter was also referred to the State Attorney General's office for review of potential wire fraud and forgery charges. That process is ongoing, and I won't speak to what the outcome might be. Stewart, the retired co-founder, reached out to me personally 3 weeks after the settlement. He said he'd been approached by Raymond 6 months earlier about the acquisition and had been told I was fully on board. He said something felt off, but he'd convinced himself he was being suspicious for no reason. He apologized. I appreciated it. I told him that being convinced something felt off and then talking yourself out of it is one of the most human things there is. I've thought about the former employee who sent me that LinkedIn message. 4 sentences. She had no obligation to do that. She was leaving a job she was already done with. She could have walked out and said nothing. I found her to the company's old HR records and wrote her a letter. Actual paper. Actual envelope. I told her that those 4 sentences changed everything. I don't know if she ever writes back. I hope she knows it mattered. The company is doing fine. We brought in an outside operations director on a 6-month contract while we stabilized, and she's been so effective that we've made the role permanent. The 63 employees are still there. A few of them have sent me cards or stopped me in the parking lot to say they're glad the company is still independent, still ours. Those moments are harder to receive than I expected. I don't always know what to say. Usually I just say thank you and mean it. I still have Kevin's desk in the home office. I haven't changed much about it. There's a sticky note on the monitor in his handwriting that says verify everything twice, invoice once. I used to think it was a joke about billing. I don't think that anymore. The brunch, by the way, never happened. As far as I know, my sister-in-law still has the table set somewhere in her head, the one where I was supposed to sit down with a pen and a smile and sign away everything Kevin built. I think about that table sometimes. I think about how close I came to sitting at it. I'm glad I answered Leonard's text. Kevin had a sticky note on his monitor that said verify everything twice, invoice once. I used to smile at it. I thought it was just the kind of thing a careful person writes down to remind themselves to slow down during a busy week. I understand it differently now. There's a version of this story where I go to that brunch, where I sit down at my sister-in-law's table, sign 3 documents I haven't read carefully enough, and walk back to my car thinking I did something good, that I stayed involved, that I showed up, that I was holding things together the way Kevin would have wanted. That version of me loses everything he built, not because she was foolish, because she was grieving and someone she trusted decided that her grief was an opportunity. What Raymond did wasn't an accident. It was a system. Every small act of helpfulness, every rescheduled meeting, every don't worry, I'll handle it. It was architecture. He built something patient and deliberate over 14 months, and he built it specifically around the shape of my vulnerability. That's not impulsive wrongdoing. That's a choice made repeatedly over a long period of time. And choices like that have a way of compounding, not just in the damage they cause, but in what they eventually expose about the person making them. I think about the former employee who sent me 4 sentences on LinkedIn and then went on with their life. She had nothing to gain. She was already out the door, but something in her, some stubborn, quiet sense of what's right, made her stop and type those words anyway. That's the kind of integrity that doesn't announce itself. It just acts when it would be easier not to. I want to be more like her. I'm trying. The part that took me the longest to make peace with was my own role in it. Not the forgiveness part. I got there eventually. The understanding part. I extended trust without verifying it. I let grief make my decisions. I confuse someone's access to my life with their right to it. Those aren't character flaws. They're human responses to an impossible situation. But understanding them, really sitting with them, not to punish myself but to actually learn, that's what changed how I move through the world now. I read every document I sign. I ask questions when something doesn't make sense, even when I feel like I should already know the answer. I have people around me now. Leonard, my attorney, the new operations director, who I trust because they've earned it, not because I needed someone to trust. That distinction matters more than I can explain. Leonard once told me that the best financial controls aren't there because you expect people to steal. They're there because clarity protects everyone, including the people who would never steal in the first place. I've thought about that a lot. The systems Kevin put in place weren't paranoia. They were respect. For the work. For the people. For the future. Raymond mistook those systems for obstacles. I'm learning to see them for what they are. The bones of something worth protecting. The company is still standing. The 63 people who came to work every day while all of this was happening underneath them, they never knew how close it came. I'm glad they didn't have to. And I'm glad I answered that text.